The phone call that destroyed Seattle came at 11:47 p.m. on October 13th, 1984. 12 seconds of pure terror that would haunt the FBI for 40 years. But here's what they never told you, what they buried in a file so deep it took 4 decades to surface. The voice whispering those final words wasn't the killer's voice at all. It was someone the victim trusted, someone who should have saved her. The 911 dispatcher, Carol Matthews, would resign 3 weeks later and never speak of that night again. The tape was classified. The investigation was sealed. And Isabella Rhodes, 17 years old, honor student, youth shelter volunteer, vanished into Seattle's fog like she'd never existed. No body, no weapon, no justice. Just a blood-stained sweater near Lake Union and footprints that ended where water should have begun. Except the ground was dry. That's the case that paralyzed the FBI. That's the mystery that broke a good agent. And if you want to understand how one dusty file can expose a monster who hid in plain sight for nearly 3 decades, then stay with me, because what you're about to hear will change everything you think you know about unsolved crimes. Hit that subscribe button right now. It helps the algorithm bring these forgotten stories to people who need to hear them. Share this with someone who loves true mysteries. Comment below if you've ever heard whispers about the ghost of Lake Union. Your engagement keeps these cold cases alive. Now let me take you back to that night, the night Seattle stopped breathing. Isabella Rhodes was not supposed to die. She was the girl everyone loved. Bright hazel eyes that seemed to see straight into your soul. A laugh that made the darkest days bearable. She spent her Tuesday evenings at Harbor Hope Shelter, serving soup to the homeless, reading stories to runaway kids. She'd been accepted to Stanford early admission. Her future was golden. But on that fog-drenched October night, something went catastrophically wrong. The call came from a payphone near the Lake Union docks, a rusted metal booth that reeked of seaweed and decay. Carol Matthews picked up on the second ring, her voice practiced and calm. 911, what's your emergency? Heavy breathing. The sound of footsteps splashing through puddles. Then Isabella's voice, young and fractured with terror. Please, he's going to... A crash, glass shattering. A scream that would echo through Carol's nightmares for the rest of her life. And then a male voice, soft as silk, venomous as arsenic. No one will ever know. Silence! The line went dead. Police arrived at the payphone within 6 minutes. The booth door was hanging open, swaying in the cold October wind. Blood streaked the metal walls, not splattered but smeared, like someone had been dragged out slowly, deliberately. Isabella's blue cardigan sweater lay crumpled on the ground, soaked in blood and lake water. But here's where it gets strange. Here's where the case starts to unravel into something far darker than a simple abduction. The footprints. 2 sets. One small, frantic. Isabella's white sneakers leaving desperate tracks in the mud. The other set larger, methodical, following her with the patience of a predator who knew his prey couldn't escape. Both sets led toward the water's edge. Both sets stopped exactly 14 feet from the lake. Not at the water, 14 feet before it, on dry ground, as if both Isabella and her attacker had simply dissolved into the fog. The FBI seized the case by dawn. Special Agent Marcus Hale, 26 years old, hungry to prove himself, arrived with a team of forensic specialists who treated the scene like a sacred crime site. They photographed every blade of grass, collected soil samples, interviewed every person within a 2-mile radius. They found nothing. No witnesses, no weapon, no body, no motive. Isabella's father, Richard Brooks, a respected architect, was questioned for 18 hours. He broke down repeatedly, insisting his daughter had no enemies, no secret boyfriend, no hidden life. She was perfect, he sobbed. She was everything good in this world. Her mother had died of cancer 2 years prior. Isabella was all Richard had left. The FBI interviewed Isabella's teachers, her classmates, her shelter supervisor. Everyone said the same thing. She was kind, responsible, incapable of making enemies. If someone wanted to hurt her, it made no sense, but someone had. and that someone was so careful, so calculated, that he left behind only one real clue, those 12 seconds of recorded horror. The FBI's audio forensics team analyzed the tape frame by frame. They isolated the background sounds, distant traffic, a ship's horn, the metallic clang of a chain against a flagpole. They tried to identify the male voice, running it through every database available in 1984. Nothing matched. The voice was middle-aged, educated American, but beyond that, it could have been anyone. Agent Hale listened to that tape 217 times in the first month alone. Each time, he felt the same cold dread crawling up his spine. Each time, he heard something that didn't quite fit. A hesitation in Isabella's voice right before she screamed, like she'd recognized her attacker and couldn't believe what was happening. She knew him, Hale told his supervising agent. She knew who was going to kill her. But knowing and proving are two different things. By December 1984, the case was reclassified as a probable homicide. By spring of 1985, it was moved to cold case status. By 1990, it was a ghost story, the kind of urban legend Seattle teenagers whispered about at sleepovers. The girl who vanished at Lake Union, the ghost in the fog. Agent Marcus Hale never forgot. Every October 13th for 40 years, he returned to that exact spot where the footprints ended. He'd stand there in the rain, staring at the water, asking the same question into the void. Who were you running from, Isabella? He thought he'd die without ever knowing the answer. But in 2024, a new agent with sharp eyes and a stubborn heart would crack open a sealed file. Inside, she'd find one overlooked detail, one impossible, terrifying detail that would bring the whole rotten truth crashing down. The monster was never a stranger. He'd been there all along. Marcus Hale was 70 years old when the nightmares started coming back. Not the vague, shadowy kind that fade with morning coffee. These were vivid, surgical in their cruelty. He'd wake at 3 a.m. drenched in sweat, hearing that 12-second phone call on loop, Isabella's scream drilling into his skull like a dentist's bit. His wife, Margaret, had learned to sleep through it. After 40 years of marriage to a haunted man, she understood that some ghosts don't leave just because you ask them nicely. It was 2024 now. Hale had been retired from the FBI for 8 years. He lived in a modest craftsman house in Ballard, spent his mornings at the shooting range, his afternoons pretending to care about woodworking. But everyone who knew him, really knew him, understood that Marcus Hale had never truly left October 13th, 1984. He'd failed Isabella Rhodes. And failure for a man like Hale was a debt that compounded interest every single day. Every year on the anniversary, he made the same pilgrimage, rain or shine, healthy or sick. He'd drive down to Lake Union, park near the old payphone location, though the booth itself had been removed in 1997, and stand exactly where Isabella's footprints had ended, 14 feet from the water, on ground that should have been wet but wasn't. This year was no different. October 13th, 2024, 40 years to the day. Hale stood there with his hands in his coat pockets, watching the morning fog roll across the lake like a living thing. The city had changed. Where there'd once been warehouses and rust, now there were condos and coffee shops with names like Awakened Bean and Ethereal Grounds. Seattle had gentrified its trauma, paved over its scars with money and tech startups. But the ghosts remained. "Who were you running from, Isabella?" Hale whispered into the cold air. He always asked, never got an answer. Behind him, a jogger passed by with earbuds in, completely unaware she was running through a crime scene that had never been solved. To her, this was just another scenic waterfront path. To Hale, it was sacred ground, cursed ground. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a worn photograph, the same one he'd carried for 4 decades, Isabella's junior-year school portrait. That gentle smile, those intelligent eyes that seemed to hold the weight of kindness itself. She'd been planning to major in social work at Stanford. She wanted to save broken kids, fix broken systems. Instead, she became another statistic, another cold case file gathering dust in some FBI warehouse. If you've ever lost someone and felt that hollow ache that never quite heals, leave a comment. Let me know I'm not alone in bringing these stories to light. And if this case grips you the way it gripped Agent Hale, subscribe, because the truth is coming, and you won't want to miss what happens next. Hale was about to leave when his phone buzzed. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer. Telemarketers had gotten aggressive in recent years, but something made him swipe to accept. Marcus Hale? A woman's voice. Young, urgent professional. Who's asking? Agent Leah Morgan, FBI Seattle Field Office. I need to meet with you. Today, it's about the Rhodes case. The world tilted sideways. Hale steadied himself against a nearby bench, his 70-year-old heart suddenly pounding like he was 26 again, chasing leads that went nowhere. The case is closed, he said carefully. No, sir, it's not. It was never closed. It was sealed. There's a difference. I don't understand. Meet me at the Fremont Diner in 1 hour. Come alone. Don't tell anyone you're meeting me. Her voice dropped to barely above a whisper. Someone inside the Bureau has been protecting this case for 40 years. If they know I've contacted you, they'll bury it again. The line went dead. Hale stared at his phone like it had just sprouted fangs. His hands were shaking, not from age, from something far more dangerous. Hope. He drove to Fremont in a daze, his mind racing through possibilities. Had they found a body? New evidence? A deathbed confession? After 4 decades of silence, what could possibly have changed? The diner was one of those retro places trying too hard to be authentic. Chrome edges and checkerboard floors and a jukebox that didn't work. Hale spotted her immediately. Mid-30s, dark hair pulled back tight, wearing a charcoal blazer that screamed, "Federal Agent." She had a laptop open and a file folder on the table that made Hale's stomach drop. He recognized that folder. Tan faded, with a red stamp across the front. Classified. Do not reopen. The Isabella Rhodes case file. Hale slid into the booth across from her. How did you get that? Digital archive migration, Agent Morgan said without preamble. The Bureau's been digitizing old case files, updating our systems. I was assigned to a batch of sealed cases from the 80s. This one was labeled Brooks O, not Rhodes. Someone deliberately misfiled it. Why would someone... To hide it. Morgan opened the folder with the careful reverence of someone handling explosives. Agent Hale, in 40 years, how many times did you review this case file? Hundreds, maybe thousands. Did you ever see this? She slid a plastic evidence sleeve across the table. Inside was a letter, handwritten, on notebook paper with a purple ink stain in the corner. Hale's blood went cold. Dear Dad, he read aloud, if anything happens to me, it won't be my fault. I need you to know that. Whatever they say I did, whatever story they tell, please remember I would never leave you on purpose. I love you more than words. Your Isabella. The date at the top, September 28th, 1984. 2 weeks before she vanished. Hale looked up at Morgan, his voice barely functional. Richard Brooks told us Isabella never wrote him anything unusual. He said she was happy, normal, no signs of distress. I know, Morgan said. So either he lied to the FBI in 1984, or someone forged this letter and planted it in the file after the fact. Hale's mind was already 3 steps ahead, analyzing possibilities, discarding theories. Morgan leaned forward. There's more. I had our forensic document examiner analyze the handwriting. It matches Isabella's samples, her school papers, birthday cards to her father. It's definitely her writing. Then why would her father deny? Because he never saw it. Morgan pulled out another document. This letter was logged into evidence on November 3rd, 1984, 3 weeks after Isabella disappeared. It was supposedly found in Isabella's bedroom during a secondary search. I conducted that search personally, Hale said, his voice hardening. There was no letter. Exactly. Morgan's eyes locked onto his. Someone planted this letter in the evidence file, someone with access to Isabella's handwriting samples, someone who wanted to create a narrative that Isabella knew she was in danger, but didn't want her father confirming or denying it. The implications crashed over Hale like a tidal wave. "This was an inside job," he whispered. Morgan nodded slowly. "Someone in the FBI wanted this case to go cold, and they've been protecting it ever since." Outside the diner window, Seattle continued its indifferent routine. But inside that booth, two agents stared at each other across 40 years of lies, finally understanding the truth. Isabella Rhodes hadn't just been murdered. She'd been erased. Richard Brooks lived in a place where people went to forget they were dying. Evergreen Meadows, assisted living, sat on the outskirts of Tacoma, surrounded by manicured lawns that looked plastic in their perfection. The building smelled like industrial cleanser trying to mask something far less pleasant. Age, decay, the slow erosion of memory and dignity. Hale and Morgan signed in at the front desk, flashing their credentials to a receptionist who barely looked up from her phone. They walked down corridors lined with watercolor paintings of flowers that had never existed in nature. Too bright, too cheerful, desperate attempts to inject life into a place people came to die. Room 217, the door was slightly ajar. Richard Brooks sat in a wheelchair by the window, staring out at nothing. He'd aged into a ghost of himself. The confident architect who'd built half of Seattle's skyline was now a hollow shell. 81 years old, his hands trembling with Parkinson's, his eyes clouded with cataracts and something deeper, grief that had calcified into bone. "Mr. Brooks?" Morgan stepped inside first, her voice gentle. "I'm Agent Leah Morgan, FBI. This is Marcus." Richard's voice was sandpaper on rust. He turned his wheelchair slowly, and when his eyes found Hale, something flickered there. Recognition and anger. "You gave up on her." The words hit Hale like a physical blow. "No, sir, I never—" "You all did. The entire goddamn FBI. You let my daughter disappear like she was nothing, like she didn't matter." Richard's hands gripped the wheelchair armrest so hard his knuckles went white. "Why are you here? To apologize 40 years too late?" Morgan stepped forward, pulling out the evidence sleeve with the letter. "Mr. Brooks, we need you to look at something. It's important." She placed it on the small table beside him. Richard leaned forward, squinting through his damaged eyes. As he read the words supposedly from his daughter, his entire body went rigid. "Where did you get this?" His voice was barely a whisper. "It was in Isabella's case file," Morgan said. "Logged as evidence 3 weeks after she vanished. You were shown this during the investigation, correct?" "No." Richard looked up, his eyes suddenly sharp despite the cataracts. "I've never seen this letter in my life." Hale and Morgan exchanged glances. "Mr. Brooks, are you certain? In 1984, the FBI documented—" "I'm old, Agent Morgan, not senile." Richard's jaw clenched. "My daughter never wrote this, and even if she had, I would have shown it to you people immediately. This is—" He stopped, his breath catching. "This is wrong." "Wrong how?" Hale crouched beside the wheelchair, making eye contact. "The handwriting is Isabella's. We've verified it. The words are hers. The handwriting is hers." Richard's trembling finger traced the purple ink stain in the corner. But Isabella never used purple ink. She hated it. Said it reminded her of her mother's cancer medications, those damn purple pills that didn't save her. The room went silent, except for the hum of fluorescent lights overhead. "She only ever wrote in blue or black," Richard continued, his voice strengthening with certainty. "Always. School papers, diary entries, birthday cards, never purple. Not once after her mother died." Morgan pulled out her phone, scrolling through photos of evidence. "Mr. Brooks, we have samples from Isabella's school assignments, her journal. Check the dates." Richard's eyes locked onto hers with an intensity that made him seem decades younger. Before her mother's death in 1982, she used purple sometimes. After? Never. Hale felt his pulse quicken. So someone copied Isabella's handwriting from older samples. Samples from before she stopped using purple ink. Someone who had access to her school records, Morgan added, her mind already racing. Someone who knew her well enough to forge her writing but didn't know about the purple ink detail. Richard's face crumpled. I tried to tell them. Back in 1984, I tried to tell the agents that something was wrong with the investigation, that Isabella had been afraid of someone at her school. Who? Hale's voice was urgent. Mr. Brooks. Who was she afraid of? She wouldn't tell me his name, but she said he watched her, made comments about her body during class, touched her shoulder too long, asked her to stay after school for extra help she didn't need. Richard's voice broke. I told her to report him. She said she tried, but the principal didn't believe her, said she was misinterpreting professional concern. The words hung in the air like poison gas. What school did Isabella attend? Morgan's fingers were already poised over her phone. Roosevelt High, she was a junior. Morgan's fingers flew across the screen, accessing FBI databases, pulling up the original investigation files. According to the 1984 interviews, only 3 staff members from Roosevelt were questioned. The principal, a guidance counselor, and... She paused, her face going pale. One teacher, Jonathan Crane, literature and creative writing. Hale remembered that name, vaguely, a sidebar in the case file. He was cleared, his alibi was solid. Too solid, Morgan muttered, reading the interview transcript. He was at a faculty dinner with 12 witnesses from 6 p.m. until midnight. The 911 call came at 11:47. So he couldn't have been there. Hale stood, pacing the small room. Unless the timeline was wrong, Richard said quietly. Unless someone adjusted when Isabella actually disappeared. The implications were staggering. Morgan's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and her expression shifted. Fear, quick and primal. We need to leave, now. What's wrong? Someone just accessed Isabella's case file from a terminal inside FBI headquarters 3 minutes ago. Morgan was already moving toward the door. Someone knows we're investigating. Hale turned back to Richard. Mr. Brooks, don't tell anyone we were here. Not the staff, not other residents, no one. Why? What's happening? The person who killed your daughter, Hale said, his voice hard as granite, might still be protecting their secret, and they have friends in high places. They left quickly, but not before Hale saw something that made his blood freeze. Standing in the hallway outside Richard's room was a nurse, middle-aged, unremarkable, holding a medication tray. But she wasn't moving, wasn't distributing pills. She was just standing there, watching them. As they passed, her eyes followed them with a predator's focus. In the parking lot, Morgan gripped Hale's arm. Did you see her? The nurse? Yeah. The nurse? Yeah. That wasn't a nurse. Morgan pulled up a photo on her phone, a staff directory from Evergreen Meadows. I checked while we were walking out. There's no nurse matching that description employed here. Hale felt 40 years of training snap into focus. Someone's watching Richard Brooks. Someone who knew we'd eventually come talk to him. They sat in Morgan's car, both of them staring at the assisted living facility like it was a ticking bomb. Crane, Hale said finally. We need to find Jonathan Crane. Morgan was already typing. According to records, he retired from Roosevelt High in 1995. After that, she went quiet, her face draining of color. What? After that, he founded a youth rehabilitation center for at-risk teenage girls. Morgan's voice was hollow. It's still operating in Snohomish County. And Marcus, it's surrounded by woods, isolated, perfect for... She didn't need to finish the sentence. They'd found the monster's lair, and now the monster knew they were coming. The drive to Snohomish County took 43 minutes, but it felt like falling through time itself. Hale watched the landscape transform from urban sprawl to dense evergreen forests, civilization giving way to the kind of isolation where screams get swallowed by trees and secrets stay buried for decades. Morgan drove with her jaw set, both hands on the wheel, checking her mirrors every 30 seconds. Neither of them spoke. They didn't need to. After a certain point in an investigation, words become insufficient. Only action matters. New Dawn Rehabilitation Center sat at the end of a gravel road that wound through Douglas firs, so tall they blocked out the sun. The compound, because that's what it was really, consisted of 3 buildings: a main lodge, a dormitory, and what looked like a chapel. A wooden sign near the entrance read, "Healing Young Lives Through Faith and Structure." It looked wholesome, pastoral, the kind of place concerned parents sent troubled daughters to get straightened out. Hale's gut told him it was a hunting ground. They parked a quarter-mile away, hidden by trees, and approached on foot. Morgan had her service weapon accessible but concealed. Hale, technically a civilian now, carried nothing but 40 years of rage and a burning need for answers. "We have no warrant," Morgan whispered, as they crouched behind a moss-covered log. "Anything we find might not be admissible." "I don't care about admissible," Hale said. "I care about the truth." Through binoculars, they observed the compound. Teenage girls moved between buildings in small groups, some wearing casual clothes, others in what looked like uniforms. A man in his 70s stood on the main lodge porch, watching them with the benevolent smile of someone who believed he was doing God's work. Jonathan Crane, it had to be. Older now, silver-haired, distinguished in a way that probably made parents trust him instantly. But Hale had learned long ago that monsters don't always look monstrous. Sometimes they look like teachers, ministers, coaches, the very people we're taught to trust. "We need to get inside," Morgan said. "Talk to those girls, see if—" Her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, and her expression went from determined to horrified in the span of a heartbeat. "What?" "It's from an encrypted number." Morgan's hands were shaking as she held up the screen. The message was simple: "Stop digging or join Isabella in the lake." Hale felt ice water dump into his veins. "They're tracking your phone." "Impossible." "Bureau phones are—" Morgan stopped mid-sentence, realization dawning. "Unless someone inside the Bureau is feeding them our location." "We need to move now!" But before they could retreat, a hand clamped down on Hale's shoulder from behind. "Don't move, don't turn around, don't make a sound." The voice was male, middle-aged, carrying the weight of authority. Hale's body tensed, calculating angles, assessing threats. Morgan's hand inched toward her weapon. "Agent Morgan, if you pull that gun, you'll be dead before it clears the holster. I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here to save your goddamn lives." Slowly, Hale turned his head. The man behind him was tall, maybe 60, with gray stubble and eyes that had seen too much. He wore civilian clothes but moved like military, or law enforcement. "Who are you?" Hale demanded. "Someone who's been watching this place for 3 years. Someone who knows exactly what Jonathan Crane is and what he's done." The man released Hale's shoulder. "My name is David Chen. My daughter Emily disappeared in 2021. She was a resident here." Morgan's training kicked in. "Did you file a missing persons report?" "Of course I did. Seattle PD took the report, passed it to the FBI, and it vanished into the same black hole that swallowed Isabella Rhodes." Chen's voice cracked with barely controlled fury. "They told me Emily was a runaway. That troubled girls do this all the time. They stopped investigating after 2 weeks." "Why didn't you push harder?" Hale asked, not unkindly. "Because someone from the FBI showed up at my house and told me that if I kept making noise, they'd find evidence that I'd been abusing my daughter, that I was the reason she ran." Chen's hands clenched into fists. "They threatened to destroy me, so I shut up, but I never stopped watching this place." Morgan pulled up photos on her phone. "Is this your daughter?" Chen looked at Emily's picture and his entire face crumpled. She was 18, smart, funny, made bad choices with boys and drugs, but nothing that should have gotten her killed. "You think Crane murdered her?" "I think Crane has been murdering girls for 40 years, and someone very powerful has been covering it up." Chen pulled out a worn notebook filled with handwritten notes. "I've documented everything. Every girl who's come through here. Cross-referenced them with missing persons reports. In the last 15 years alone, 7 girls have vanished after staying at New Dawn." Hale felt his blood pressure spiking. 7? That I could confirm. Could be more. Chen's jaw tightened. But here's what you need to understand. Crane doesn't work alone. He has someone protecting him, someone with access to FBI databases, someone who can make files disappear and witnesses shut up. Morgan and Hale exchanged glances, both thinking the same name. Agent Samuel Ward, Hale's former partner, the man who trained him, the man whose signature appeared on every redaction in Isabella's file. "There's something else," Chen continued. 2 days ago, Crane received a visitor, black SUV, government plates. I photographed them. He showed them a grainy photo on his phone. 2 men standing outside the main lodge, shaking hands with Crane. One was elderly, distinguished, wearing an expensive suit. The other was younger, fit, unmistakably federal. Hale's world tilted. He recognized the younger man immediately. It was impossible not to. Hale had worked alongside him for 15 years. Special Agent Samuel Ward. Still active, still protecting Crane, still burying bodies and files with equal efficiency. "Son of a bitch," Hale whispered. "He's still doing it." Morgan's face had gone white. "Ward's not just corrupt, he's Crane's accomplice. Or his handler," Chen added. "I think Crane's been an FBI informant for decades. They gave him immunity in exchange for information on other criminals, and when he killed girls, they covered it up to protect their asset." The theory made horrible, perfect sense. The FBI had a long history of protecting valuable informants, even violent ones, even murderers. If Crane had provided intel on organized crime, drug trafficking, terrorism, the Bureau might have decided his usefulness outweighed his sins. Isabella Rhodes hadn't just been murdered by a monster. She'd been sacrificed by the institutions sworn to protect her. "We need evidence," Morgan said, her voice hard. "Something that ties Ward to Crane directly, something that proves the conspiracy." "There's a basement in the main lodge," Chen said. "I've seen Crane go down there late at night. He stays for hours, alone. I think that's where he keeps his trophies." Hale understood immediately. Serial killers often kept mementos, jewelry, clothing, photographs, physical proof of their conquests. "We break in tonight," Hale decided. "After dark, get what we need and get out." "That's illegal," Morgan said, but her tone suggested she was already committed. "So is murder," Hale shot back. "So is 40 years of institutional corruption. If you're still watching, if this story has gripped your heart the way it gripped ours, leave a comment telling us you're here. Share this with someone who needs to know that some people never give up on justice. Subscribe so you don't miss what happens when these agents finally confront the monster face to face." Chen checked his watch. "Sun sets in 3 hours. I'll show you the blind spots in their security. But understand something. If we're caught, Ward will make sure we disappear just like those girls." "Then we don't get caught," Hale said simply. As they retreated deeper into the woods to plan their approach, none of them noticed the security camera hidden in a tree branch above them. A camera that fed directly to Jonathan Crane's office, where he sat, watching their every move, smiling that benevolent smile, and reaching for his phone to call his friend in the FBI. The trap was set, and they were walking straight into it. Darkness fell over Snohomish County like a shroud. The kind of darkness that exists only in places far from city lights, absolute, suffocating, the sort that makes you understand why humans invented fire and civilization. Hale, Morgan, and Chen crouched in the tree line, watching New Dawn's windows go dark one by one, as girls were herded to their dormitory for mandatory lights out at 9 p.m. Chen had provided thermal imaging from his surveillance equipment. Guard rotation happens every 2 hours. There's a blind spot on the east side of the main lodge. No cameras, no motion sensors. Crane's office is on the 2nd floor, but the basement access is through the kitchen. "How do you know all this?" Morgan asked, impressed despite herself. 3 years of obsession teaches you things," Chen's voice was hollow. "Same way 40 years of obsession taught Agent Hale to never let go." Hale checked his watch. 10:47 p.m. The compound was silent except for the wind moving through the pines. "We go in 15 minutes. Morgan, your point. Chen, you stay here and watch our exit. If anything goes wrong..." "I call nobody," Chen finished, "because there's nobody to call who isn't compromised." It was a sobering truth. They were alone. 3 people against an institution. At 11:02 p.m., Hale and Morgan moved. They crossed the open ground in 20 seconds, pressed themselves against the lodge's east wall, and waited. No alarms, no lights, no sounds, except their own controlled breathing. Morgan picked the kitchen door lock in under 30 seconds. Skills the FBI taught but rarely expected agents to use against American citizens on American soil. But they'd crossed that line the moment they decided Isabella Rhodes mattered more than regulations. Inside, the kitchen smelled like industrial cafeteria food and bleach. Institutional, sterile. Morgan's flashlight beam cut through the darkness, revealing a space that looked normal. Pots hanging from hooks, a commercial refrigerator humming softly, knives arranged by size on a magnetic strip. But normal was exactly what monsters used as camouflage. Hale spotted the basement door immediately. It was heavy steel, newer than everything else in the building, with a keypad lock that glowed faint red in the darkness. "Damn! Electronic lock." Morgan pulled out a small device from her pocket. "FBI Tech Division. It cycles through code combinations. Should take about..." The light turned green. 30 seconds. The door opened with a pneumatic hiss that seemed impossibly loud in the silence. Below them, stairs descended into absolute blackness. They went down. The basement was not what Hale expected. He'd imagined something crude, a dungeon, chains, obvious horror. Instead, it looked like an archive. Metal filing cabinets lined the walls, boxes stacked with meticulous organization, a desk with a computer that was still warm, recently used. "He's been here tonight," Morgan whispered, touching the monitor. Hale opened the first filing cabinet. Inside were folders, dozens of them, each labeled with a name and date. He pulled one out. "Emily Chen, 2021. His hands trembled as he opened it. Photographs, not the kind parents took, the kind predators collected. Emily in various stages of distress, Emily crying, Emily looking at the camera with eyes that had given up hope. "Jesus Christ," Morgan breathed, looking over his shoulder. Hale's voice was ice. "Check the others." They moved methodically through the cabinet. Each folder was the same, a girl's name, dates spanning weeks or months, photographs documenting psychological torture disguised as rehabilitation, and then a final photo. Always the same composition, the girl sleeping, peaceful, arranged like a doll. "These are post-mortem," Morgan said, her voice cracking. "He's photographing them after he kills them." Hale pulled out another folder, hands shaking now. "Stephanie Morrison, 1987, Claire Houston, 1992, Jennifer Park, 1998. He looked up at Morgan, his face ashen. "This goes back decades, dozens of girls. Where are the bodies?" "Lake Union," a voice said from the stairs behind them. "Where else?" They spun around, weapons drawn, or in Hale's case, fists raised, to find Jonathan Crane descending the stairs with the casual confidence of a man who'd already won. He wore a cardigan and reading glasses. He looked like someone's gentle grandfather. "Agent Morgan, Agent Hale." Crane smiled. "Or should I say former Agent Hale? I've been expecting you." "Don't move," Morgan commanded, her Glock trained on his chest. Crane raised his hands, but his expression remained placid, almost amused. "You won't shoot me. You need me to testify. You need me to expose the corruption. Isn't that why you're here?" "We're here for evidence," Hale said. "Evidence that will put you in prison for the rest of your miserable life. Evidence that was provided to you by someone who wanted you to find it." Crane gestured at the filing cabinets. "Do you really think I'd keep incriminating documentation in an unlocked basement?" That I wouldn't know when someone breaks into my facility? The realization hit Morgan like a freight train. This is a setup. Clever girl. Crane's smile widened. Samuel Ward sends his regards. He's upstairs right now, planting enough evidence in your vehicle to ensure both of you spend the next 20 years in federal prison. Breaking and entering, stalking, harassment of a respected community leader, fabricating evidence against a federal informant. Informant, Hale spat. You murdered Isabella Rhodes. You've murdered dozens of girls. Allegedly. Crane's voice was light, conversational, but you'll never prove it. Because every file you found tonight will disappear before morning. Every photograph will be explained as part of my legitimate counseling documentation. And you, he pointed at them like a professor correcting students, you will be discredited, prosecuted, and forgotten. Morgan's gun never wavered. We have a witness. David Chen has been documenting everything. The unstable father with a restraining order against him. The man who made terroristic threats against this facility. Crane shook his head sadly. Poor David. His obsession destroyed his credibility years ago. No one will believe him. Hale felt the walls closing in. 40 years of failure crystallizing into this single moment. They'd been outmaneuvered. Again. There's one thing you didn't account for, Morgan said quietly. Oh, and what's that? I've been recording this entire conversation. Morgan tapped her collar, where a small camera was clipped. FBI body camera, live streaming to a secure server. Everything you just said is documented. For the first time, Crane's expression flickered, not quite fear, but uncertainty. It won't matter, he said, but his voice had lost its confidence. Ward controls access to FBI servers. He'll delete. Ward doesn't control this one, Morgan interrupted. This footage is going to a journalist, someone outside the Bureau, someone who's been investigating FBI corruption for years and waiting for a source brave enough to go on record. Crane's face hardened. Then you've just signed your death warrant. Maybe, Morgan said, but I've also signed yours. Footsteps thundered above them, multiple people, voices shouting commands. Crane smiled again, recovering his composure. That would be local police, responding to a 911 call about armed intruders threatening a children's facility. You have about 30 seconds to decide how this ends. Hale looked at Morgan. She looked back. In that moment, they both understood the choice. Surrender meant prosecution, discrediting, the case buried forever. Running meant becoming fugitives, but keeping the investigation alive. We run, Hale said. They bolted up the stairs, Crane's laughter following them like a curse. The kitchen erupted in chaos, police lights strobing through windows, voices demanding surrender, the mechanical sound of weapons being readied. But Chen had been watching, and Chen had prepared an exit. They crashed through a rear window as flashlights converged on the kitchen, rolled through broken glass, and landed hard in the dirt outside, where Chen was waiting with his truck engine running. Go, 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 Hale shouted. They piled in and Chen floored it, tires spitting gravel as police vehicles roared to life behind them. Chen drove like a man with nothing left to lose, which is exactly what he was. The truck careened down the forest road, headlights off, navigating by memory and moonlight. Behind them, red and blue lights multiplied like a disease. Local police, county sheriff, probably state patrol by now. We can't outrun them, Morgan said, gripping the dashboard as they took a corner at 60 miles per hour. We don't need to outrun them. Chen jerked the wheel left onto what looked like solid forest, but it was a trail, barely visible, overgrown, probably used by hunters decades ago. The truck bucked over roots and rocks as tree branches scraped the sides like fingernails on a coffin. We just need to disappear long enough to get that recording out. Hale twisted in his seat, watching the police lights fade as they penetrated deeper into the wilderness. Where does this lead? Old logging camp, abandoned since the 80s. No one knows it exists, except people who've been watching these woods for years. Chen's jaw was set, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. We hole up there, upload the footage, And then what? Morgan interrupted. We're fugitives now, assaulting a federal informant, breaking and entering, fleeing police. Even if the recording exposes Crane, we're still going to prison. Better prison than dead, Hale said flatly. And make no mistake, Ward will kill us if he gets the chance. The truck burst into a clearing. Chen killed the engine, and they sat in sudden, suffocating silence. Around them, the skeletons of old logging equipment rusted in the moonlight. A broken crane, collapsed buildings, the ghosts of an industry that had bled this forest dry and moved on. Upload the footage, Hale told Morgan. Now! Morgan pulled out her phone. No signal. She tried her laptop, accessing satellite connection. It's going to take 10 minutes, maybe 15. We don't have 15 minutes, Chen said, staring at his mirrors. But they had no choice. They waited. In the silence, Hale's mind raced through 40 years of failure. All the times he'd been this close to truth, only to have it snatched away. All the nights he'd stood by Lake Union, asking Isabella who killed her. Now he knew. And knowing was somehow worse than not knowing, because knowing meant understanding how completely the system had failed her. I need to tell you something, Morgan said quietly, eyes still on her laptop as the upload progressed. About why I took this case. Hale looked at her. In the dim light, she looked younger than her 36 years. Vulnerable. My sister disappeared in 2003. Sarah Morgan, she was 19, college student. The case went cold in 3 weeks. Morgan's voice was steady, but her hands trembled. I joined the FBI to find answers, to understand how someone could just vanish. But the more cases I worked, the more I realized they don't vanish. They're taken, and sometimes the people who are supposed to find them are the ones hiding them. Your sister, Hale said slowly. Where did she disappear from? Seattle, near the University District. Jen turned around in his seat, his expression unreadable. What was her major? Social work. She wanted to help at-risk youth. Morgan looked up, and in her eyes, Hale saw the same haunted determination he'd carried for 4 decades. She volunteered at shelters, youth programs, places where Jonathan Crane recruited, Chen finished. Jesus Christ! The upload bar on Morgan's laptop reached 47%. The night pressed in around them, heavy with implication. We need to check his files, Hale said. The ones he kept in that basement, before he destroys them. We can't go back there, Morgan protested. We don't need to. Hale pulled out his phone, opening the photos he'd taken in the basement, quick snapshots of folder labels, while Morgan confronted Crane. His hands shook as he scrolled through them. Morrison, Houston, Park. He stopped. Morgan, Sarah Morgan, 2003. The air left the truck. Morgan's face went white. No, that's not... I'm sorry. Hale showed her the screen. Clear as day, her sister's name on a folder, dated April through June 2003. Did you photograph inside the folder? Morgan's voice was barely a whisper. No, I didn't have time. Morgan's hands clenched into fists. Then we go back tonight. We get that file. That's suicide, Chen said. The place is swarming with police. I don't care. Morgan's eyes were steel. My sister's file is evidence. It proves Crane's pattern. It proves everything. The upload bar hit 73%. Even if we get the file, Hale said gently, Leah, you need to prepare yourself for what might be in it. I know what's in it. Morgan's voice broke. I've known for 21 years. I just needed someone to confirm it. I needed to not be crazy. I needed... Her laptop chimed. Upload complete. It's done, she whispered. The recording is with Marcus Chen, no relation, at the Seattle Times. He's the investigative journalist who's been covering FBI corruption. If anything happens to us, he'll release it. Then we've won, Chen said. The truth is out there. No. Hale shook his head. The truth is uploaded, but Crane and Ward are still free, and they'll disappear the moment they realize what we've done. Morgan closed her laptop with finality, so we don't give them time to disappear. Before anyone could respond, headlights pierced the forest behind them. multiple vehicles, moving fast. "How did they find us?" Chen hissed. Hale felt his stomach drop. "Morgan, your phone, your laptop, they're FBI issued. I disabled GPS. There are other ways to track." Hale grabbed her phone and laptop, hurled them out the window into the darkness. "They've been tracking us this entire time." The headlights were closer now, close enough to see they weren't police vehicles. They were black SUVs, federal plates. "That's not local police," Morgan said, her voice tight with fear. "No," Hale agreed, "that's Ward, coming to clean up loose ends." Jen started the engine, but Hale grabbed his arm. "Wait, if we run, they'll hunt us forever. If we stay, we die," Chen finished. "Maybe." Hale's mind was calculating odds, strategies, 40 years of field experience crystallizing into one desperate plan. "Or maybe we end this, right here, right now." "How?" Morgan asked. "Ward doesn't know we've already uploaded the footage. He thinks if he kills us, the evidence dies too." Hale pulled out his phone. Personal, not FBI issued, not trackable. "We use that. We draw him out. Get him to confess on record the same way Crane did." "You're insane," Chen said, but he turned off the engine. The SUVs rolled into the clearing, forming a semicircle around Chen's truck. Headlights blazed, turning night into harsh, judgmental day. Doors opened. Men emerged, not in uniform, but in tactical gear. Professional, military-grade weapons. And walking between them, calm as Sunday morning, was Special Agent Samuel Ward. 73 years old, silver-haired, distinguished. The man who'd trained Marcus Hale, the man who'd corrupted everything the badge represented. He approached the truck alone, hands visible, a sad smile on his face like he was disappointed in children who'd misbehaved. "Marcus!" Ward called out. "It doesn't have to end this way." Hale opened the truck door and stepped out, hands raised. "Then how does it end, Sam?" "You walk away. You forget about Isabella Rhodes. You forget about Crane. You live out your retirement in peace." Ward's voice was reasonable, almost kind. "This case has consumed you for 40 years. Let it go." "And if I don't?" Ward's smile faded. "Then I'll have to file a report about how you, Agent Morgan, and Mr. Chen died in a tragic shootout while assaulting a federal facility. Mentally unstable. Conspiracy theorists. A sad ending to a once promising career." Morgan stepped out next. "We recorded Crane's confession. It's already uploaded." For the first time, genuine emotion crossed Ward's face. Fear. "You're lying." "Test me," Morgan said. "Kill us. See what happens tomorrow when the Seattle Times publishes everything." The clearing went silent except for wind moving through dead trees. Ward's hand moved toward his weapon. And that's when the spotlight hit them. Helicopter overhead, rotor wash bending trees. The voice that boomed from the helicopter's speaker system was not police, not military. It was federal, crisp, authoritative, the kind of voice that ended careers and opened investigations. "Special Agent Samuel Ward, you are under arrest for obstruction of justice, conspiracy to commit murder, and violation of federal statutes under Title 18. Step away from your weapon and place your hands on your head." Ward froze, his face a mask of disbelief and rage. The tactical team around him hesitated, weapons still trained on Hale, Morgan, and Chen, but their confidence visibly cracking. "Who authorized this?" Ward shouted into the rotor wash. The helicopter descended, and Hale saw the markings. FBI Office of Professional Responsibility, Internal Affairs, the wolves who hunted bad wolves. 3 agents rappelled down, weapons drawn, moving with precision that made Ward's hired guns look like amateurs. Within seconds, Ward was on his knees, hands zip-tied behind his back, his distinguished facade crumbling into something ugly and desperate. "You don't understand," Ward snarled as they hauled him to his feet. "Crane was an asset. He provided intelligence that saved lives, American lives. He murdered children," Morgan said, her voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. "He murdered my sister." Ward's eyes found hers, and for a moment something almost like regret flickered there. Sacrifices have to be made. That's the job. That's what keeps this country safe. "That's not the job." Hale said quietly, stepping forward. That's corruption wrapped in patriotism. That's evil pretending to be necessary. One of the OPR agents, a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense expression, approached Morgan. "Agent Morgan? I'm Special Agent Victoria Barnes. We've been investigating Ward for 6 months based on anomalies in old case files. Your upload tonight gave us everything we needed for arrest warrants." "How did you know where to find us?" Morgan asked, still processing the whiplash from imminent death to sudden rescue. "We didn't. We were tracking Ward. He led us straight to you." Barnes glanced at Ward with undisguised contempt. "He activated a tactical team without authorization. That's what triggered our response. The tactical team members were being disarmed and detained, none of them resisting. They were mercenaries, not true believers. Without Ward's authority, they had no reason to die in the woods." "What about Crane?" Hale demanded. "Is he in custody?" Barnes's expression darkened. "We have teams en route to New Dawn now, but there's a complication." "What complication?" "Crane activated a dead man's switch the moment he realized you'd escaped. He's threatening to release classified information, intelligence he gathered as a federal informant, unless he's granted immunity." Barnes pulled out a tablet, showing them a video. Jonathan Crane sat in his office, that benevolent smile fixed in place. "By the time you watch this, federal agents are probably surrounding my facility. That's fine. I've lived a full life. But I wonder, does the American public know about Operation Northwind? The CIA black site in Moldova? The senator who takes bribes from foreign intelligence services?" He leaned forward, his smile widening. "I've documented everything. Names, dates, evidence. If I'm arrested, it all goes public. Every dirty secret I've collected in 40 years of cooperation. The FBI will collapse. The government will collapse. All because you couldn't let one old man live out his remaining years in peace." The video ended. "He's bluffing," Morgan said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Maybe," Barnes replied, "but we can't take that chance. The deputy director is considering offering him a deal." "No," Hale's voice was thunder. "No deals, no immunity. Not for Isabella, not for Sarah, not for Emily or any of the others." "I understand your anger, Agent Hale." "Former agent? And you don't understand. You weren't there. You didn't hear Isabella's scream on that 911 call. You didn't watch her father slowly die of grief over 40 years. Hale stepped closer, his 70-year-old frame radiating decades of compressed rage. "If Crane walks free, then justice is meaningless. The badge is meaningless. Everything I gave my life to is meaningless." Barnes met his eyes. "Then help me. Tell me how to bring him in without triggering his switch." Hale turned to Morgan and Chen. In their faces he saw the same desperate calculation. They'd come too far, sacrificed too much, to let Crane slip away on a technicality. "His dead man's switch requires him to be alive," Chen said slowly. "If he dies before he can activate it—" "We're not assassinating an American citizen," Barnes cut him off sharply. "I wasn't suggesting assassination." Chen pulled out his notebook, flipping to pages filled with meticulous observations. "Crane has a routine. Every night at midnight he walks the perimeter of his compound, alone. Says it helps him think. He's vulnerable there. Isolated, no witnesses, no cameras. If something were to happen to him during that walk," Morgan said carefully, "something that looked like an accident." Barnes held up a hand. "Stop, I can't be part of this conversation." "Then don't be." Hale looked at Ward, still zip-tied and seething nearby. "But ask yourself, what would Ward do in this situation? What has the FBI been doing for 40 years to protect their assets?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Barnes was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was ice. "I'm going to secure Agent Ward and coordinate with our teams at New Dawn. That process will take approximately 1 hour. What happens in that hour is beyond my jurisdiction." She walked away, taking Ward and her team with her. The helicopter lifted off, leaving Hale, Morgan and Chen standing in the abandoned logging camp, suddenly alone again. "She just gave us permission," Morgan said quietly. No, Hale shook his head. She gave us 1 hour. What we do with it is our choice. Chen checked his watch. 11:43 p.m. Crane takes his walk at midnight. That gives us 17 minutes to get back to New Dawn. This is vigilante justice, Morgan said. But she was already moving toward the truck. No, Hale corrected as they climbed in. This is justice that the system refused to provide. There's a difference. They drove through darkness, 3 broken people united by loss and rage, and a desperate need for something resembling closure. If you're still watching this unfold, if your heart is pounding the way ours was, leave a comment. Tell us you're here. Tell us you believe some truths are worth fighting for, even when the system fails. They reached New Dawn at 11:56 p.m. The compound was dark, federal vehicles staged at the perimeter but holding position, waiting for orders that wouldn't come for another hour. Crane emerged at exactly midnight, wearing a heavy coat against the October chill, walking the fence line with his hands clasped behind his back like a scholar contemplating philosophy. Hale, Morgan, and Chen emerged from the tree line. Crane saw them and stopped. For the first time since this began, his mask of benevolence cracked. He saw his death in their eyes. "You can't," he said. "If I die, everything goes public. You'll destroy." "We don't care," Morgan said simply. "Not anymore." Crane backed toward the fence, his composure finally shattering. "I'm a federal asset. I'm protected." Ward said, "Ward's in custody," Hale said, advancing slowly. "It's over, Jonathan. 40 years of hiding behind a badge. 40 years of murdered girls. It ends tonight." "Wait!" Crane's voice rose to a panicked shout. "I'll tell you everything, where the bodies are, every girl, Isabella's final moments, Sarah Morgan's last words. Don't you want to know?" Morgan stopped, her breath catching. Hale put a hand on her shoulder. "Leah, don't." "Tell me," Morgan whispered. "Tell me what my sister's last words were." Crane sensed an opening, hope flooding his face. "I'll tell you everything, just let me live." Morgan raised her weapon. "She said please," Crane whispered. The word hung in the October air like poison. Morgan's finger tightened on the trigger, her entire body trembling with 40 years of collective grief. Hers, Hale's, Chen's, every family that had lost a daughter to this monster's calculated cruelty. "Please what?" Morgan's voice was barely human. Crane's eyes gleamed with the predator's final gambit. "Please don't hurt my father." She wasn't begging for her own life. She was begging for yours, Agent Morgan. She thought I would go after your family next. The gun wavered. "That's what they all said in the end," Crane continued, sensing he'd found leverage. "Isabella begged for her father. Emily begged for hers. They were good girls, selfless. That's why I chose them. Because that selflessness made them easy to control, easy to isolate, easy to—" "Shut up." Hale stepped between Morgan and Crane, his voice granite. "You don't get to weaponize their love. Not anymore." "Then shoot me," Crane challenged. "Go ahead. Become murderers. Prove you're no different than me." "We're nothing like you," Chen said from behind them. "Because we're not doing this for pleasure. We're doing this for closure." Crane laughed, a brittle, desperate sound. "Closure? There is no closure. Those girls are gone. Dead. Nothing you do to me will bring them back." "You're right," Hale said quietly, and then he lowered his weapon. Morgan stared at him, betrayed. "Marcus, what are you—" "He wants us to kill him," Hale said, his 70 years of experience crystallizing into sudden clarity. "That's his final victory, making us into killers, making us compromise everything we believe in. He dies a martyr, a federal informant murdered by rogue agents. His secrets stay buried, the girls stay forgotten." "So what do we do?" Chen asked, his voice breaking. "Let him walk? Let him win?" "No." Hale turned to face Crane fully. "We let him live. In a supermax prison, in solitary confinement, where every day for the rest of his miserable life he'll wake up knowing he failed, that Isabella and Sarah and Emily and all the others are finally being honored, that the world knows exactly what he is." Crane's face twisted with rage. "You think prison scares me? I'll be protected. I'll make deals. "You'll activate your dead man switch," Hale interrupted. "Right now, go ahead. Release every secret. Destroy the FBI. Burn it all down." Crane blinked, thrown off balance. "You're calling my bluff?" "I'm calling your bluff," Hale confirmed, "because I finally understand something I should have realized 40 years ago. The system that protected you is the same system that failed Isabella. If it has to burn to finally give those girls justice, then let it burn. I'll light the match myself." The silence stretched, broken only by wind moving through the trees. Crane's hand moved toward his phone and stopped, because he was bluffing. There was no dead man's switch, no insurance policy, just a monster's final desperate lie, and Hale had seen through it. "You have nothing," Hale said softly. "You never did. You were a small-time predator who found a corrupt agent willing to look the other way. That's all, and now it's over." Crane's shoulders sagged. In that moment, the benevolent mask finally completely shattered. What remained was a frightened old man facing consequences he'd evaded for decades. "I want a lawyer," Crane whispered. "You'll get one," Morgan said, lowering her weapon, "right after we book you for 17 counts of first-degree murder." Federal agents emerged from the shadows. Barnes and her team had been watching the entire confrontation, recording every word. They moved in with practiced efficiency, taking Crane into custody with the kind of rough handling usually reserved for cop killers. As they led him away, Crane looked back one last time. "You still don't know where the bodies are. I'm the only one who knows. If you want to give those families closure, we'll find them," Chen interrupted. "Lake Union, you said it yourself. We'll drag that entire lake if we have to." Crane smiled, broken, defeated, but still cruel. "Good luck, it's a big lake." Then he was gone, swallowed by federal vehicles and the machinery of justice that had failed for so long, but was finally, slowly beginning to function. Barnes approached, her expression unreadable. "That was either the bravest or stupidest thing I've ever witnessed. I haven't decided which." "Neither have we," Hale admitted. "For what it's worth, the recording from tonight, both Crane's confession and Ward's, is admissible. We have enough to prosecute both of them without any of your extracurricular evidence gathering." Barnes paused. "The families will finally get answers." "Not all the answers," Morgan said quietly. "Not until we find the bodies." "Then we start looking tomorrow," Barnes said. "I'm authorizing a full search of Lake Union, FBI dive teams, ground-penetrating radar, whatever it takes." She walked away, leaving the three of them standing in the October darkness, feeling simultaneously victorious and hollow. "I should feel something," Chen said. "Relief, satisfaction, something." "You will," Hale told him. "Just not tonight. Tonight we're still in survival mode. The grief comes later." Morgan stared at the compound where her sister had spent her final days. "I need to see her file, the one Crane kept." "Are you sure?" Hale asked gently. No, but I need to anyway." They were granted access to the basement, now a sealed crime scene, but accessible with Barnes's authorization. Morgan opened her sister's file with trembling hands and read in silence while Hale and Chen gave her space. When she finally closed it, tears were streaming down her face, but her voice was steady. She fought. She never stopped fighting. Even at the end, she was trying to save the other girls, trying to warn someone. "She was like you," Hale said, "strong." "She was better than me." Morgan wiped her eyes. "But at least now I know. At least now she can rest." They emerged from New Dawn as dawn broke over Snohomish County, three people who'd entered the darkness and somehow found their way back to light. The Seattle Times ran the story the next day. Veteran journalist exposes 40-year FBI conspiracy. The evidence Morgan had uploaded, combined with Crane's recorded confession and Ward's arrest, created a firestorm that reached Washington, D.C. The FBI director resigned. 17 cold cases were reopened. Families who'd spent decades wondering finally had answers. The dive teams found Isabella Rhodes 3 weeks later. She'd been weighted down with chains in a part of Lake Union, so deep that 1984 technology couldn't reach. But 40 years of advances in underwater forensics finally brought her home. Hale attended the funeral, a small, quiet ceremony, Richard Brooks had died 2 years prior, never knowing his daughter had been found. But the Seattle community came out in force, remembering the gentle 17-year-old who'd volunteered at shelters and dreamed of changing the world. At the burial, Hale placed a single white rose on her coffin and whispered the same question he'd been asking for 4 decades. "Who are you running from, Isabella?" But this time he had an answer, and this time justice had finally been served. Morgan stood beside him, holding a photo of her sister. Chen stood nearby, holding one of Emily. 3 people bound by loss, bound by determination, bound by the understanding that some debts can never be repaid, but they can be acknowledged. "Thank you," Morgan said to Hale, "for never giving up, even when the system did." "Thank you for finishing what I couldn't," Hale replied. They left the cemetery together as October leaves fell around them like memories, like prayers, like the quiet whisper of 17 girls finally able to rest. The ghost of Lake Union had been laid to rest. The monster had been caged, and the dusty file that had haunted Marcus Hale for 40 years was finally mercifully closed. If this story moved you, if you believe in the power of persistence and the weight of justice delayed but never denied, share it. Comment below with the name of someone you've never forgotten. Subscribe so more forgotten cases can finally find the light they deserve. Because some truths live forever in the soul, and some voices, no matter how long silenced, deserve to finally be heard. Jonathan Crane died in prison 6 months later. Natural causes, though some say the cause was more karmic than natural. Samuel Ward is serving life without parole in a federal supermax facility. He has no visitors, no letters, no legacy except the stain he left on an institution that's still trying to wash itself clean. And Marcus Hale, he finally sleeps through the night. No more nightmares, no more ghosts. Just the quiet satisfaction of a promise kept.